Welcome, everyone, to The Lift. This is Dr. Tyra Sellers.
And I'm Dr. Linda LeBlanc.
And we're going to chat with you today about organization and time management. We have a fantastic guest today. We are excited to welcome Dr. Amber Valentino, who is the Chief Clinical Officer at Trumpet Behavioral Health. We've known Amber a long time, so I'm going to say some awesome things about Amber, and then we're going to hear about what's going on with her these days. Amber received her doctoral degree in clinical psychology from Xavier University in Cincinnati, Ohio. That sounds so fancy, Xavier University.
It does, doesn't it? I'll take it.
Yes, completed an internship and a postdoctoral fellowship and program coordinator at the Marcus Autism Center and Children's Health Care of Atlanta in Georgia. At Trumpet, you oversee clinical services, research, and training initiatives. You build clinical standards for the organization. So you're super not busy and have a lot of time on your hands. You've published several articles, several with me and Linda about supervision, as well as book chapters on, as I mentioned, supervision, ethics, creating infrastructure for conducting research and practice settings, as well as applied clinical settings. Okay, so that's a lot. You currently also serve as an associate editor for behavior analysis and practice, and you have previously served as an associate editor for the analysis of verbal behavior. So that's a whole lot of awesomeness. And I'm sure that didn't make you uncomfortable at all.
Welcome, Amber.
Yay, yes,
Thank
welcome.
It's always funny when you hear somebody articulate what you're doing. And if you didn't know your name were associated with it, then you'd say, gosh, that person sounds really busy. And then you realize that person is you.
It's you. What else is happening in your neck of the woods these days?
Oh my goodness. Well, you covered the big ones. As you mentioned, I'm the Chief Clinical Officer for Trumpet Behavioral Health. So that is my daytime gig and keeps me very busy. And I am involved in the editorial world. So I've been an AE for several journals, and it's funny, I actually was supposed to end my AE term this summer, but Stephanie Peterson, the new editor, said, would you please stay on a little longer? So I've extended it for a little while. We'll see exactly when it's going to end, but that's been a joy and a great learning experience. And then probably the only thing that you didn't mention, which is really the ultimate test of time management, is that I have an almost 2-year-old son named Porter, who, if you ever need a test of your time management skills, having a toddler is it.
Yes, it
Agreed. Well, we're going to be chatting about organization and time management today. And we always have a quote that appears in each chapter. And I'm wondering if you would do us the honor of reading it, and then we can chat a little bit about sort of what that quote means to each of us.
Yeah, I'd love to. So this is a fantastic quote. I love it. So productivity is never an accident. It is always the result of a commitment to excellence, intelligence, planning, and focused effort. And the quote is by Paul Meyer.
Yes.
Wonderful. So should I comment on that now, or?
Yeah, you go first.
Yeah, I think I'm sure we'll get into this, but this quote reminds me of a book that I believe many people have read called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And it's a wonderful book. It's got a lot of really great tips in it. But one of the things he talks about is that productivity success, it doesn't just sort of come. It's a result of systems and processes and these little baby steps that you take that get you to that success and that productivity. And so that made me think of that framework. If you haven't read the book, I highly recommend it. That idea that it's just the little things that you do every day that are the things that result in big behavior change and big accomplishments. So
yeah,
I love that idea that it's not like you're the special lucky one, and you really are a master of time management and organization, Amber, but it's not like that just happened. Oh, she's lucky. She got that gene or something. You behave in very specific ways and you evolve yourself over time because it matters to you that you're organized and efficient with your time and able to have your time away from work for that little fellow and your 2 cute dogs, as well as your time at work for everyone there who relies on you.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind. And I'm talking to two experts as well. And frankly, I learned a lot of that from the two of you. So you're very kind.
This quote makes me think of, I think it might come from the military, actually, maybe British military. I'm not positive. So fact check that and then get back to me and let me know how wrong I am. But it's the 7 Ps of planning. I don't know if the two of you have ever heard it, but I had a friend at Spectrum Center a long time ago, and her partner would always say, proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance.
I love that.
And I think that that's true, right? Like, not only do you have to plan ahead of time, but it has to be proper, right? And it has to be before, and it should result in more optimal performance. So
that's awesome.
Well, one of the things we talk about in this chapter is we borrow this notion of pivotal skills from kind of the developmental literature, and certainly this idea has been used in the autism literature, but that notion that there are these certain core pivotal skills that once you get that skill, once you develop those abilities, everything else gets better. You see this spread of effect. And, we kind of argue that organization and time management is like that. The more organized you are, the more effectively you manage your time and thus your stress, the better your, communication is going to be. You're going to be a better leader. You're going to serve your clients better. There are just so many things that are going to raise in terms of your professional game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, organization and time management skills are kind of like water, right? It's not bad for you. You'd have to drink so much water to have negative impact from water. So get you some organizational time management, glass of water in the morning and get your day.
Yeah, it's huge. I think you can have a lot of other great things in place. You can be highly intelligent. You can think conceptually about really difficult questions. You can be a good problem solver. But if all of that doesn't come together in a way that allows you to execute on specific actions and leads you toward movement and progress, then you're dehydrated, right?
Yes.
Love that. Yeah, absolutely. Organization time management's not going to replace your knowledge as a behavior analyst, but assuming you've got those skills in place, you are simply more capable of everything, getting it all done, getting it done in the amount of time. I can remember when we worked together at Trumpet, and the San Jose division had a bunch of brand new BCBAs constantly. And there was a small group of them. And I said, well, I'll work with them and mentor them. I think we called them the green team. They were fantastic.
Gosh, it's been a long time, but I remember that.
Yeah. And I thought, I am going to really teach them some stuff. And we were all so excited. And I said, okay, so in just a few minutes, we'll get to some of the behavior analysis. You can ask me any questions that you want, like I can probably answer them. But first, let me just give you a couple of tricks and tips for getting organized. So I started chatting about that, and immediately every one of them, like their faces just changed, like, oh, this is how you do it. Yep. And they started furiously taking notes, and we spent the whole time on that. And they said it was the most helpful thing. Yeah. They didn't need that other stuff. They already had that. This is what was missing. And this was what the MO was strong for this. How do you get it all done in the certain amount of time?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was having this conversation a few days ago with someone and just talking about, I remember what it was. I was presenting at a graduate class at the University of Georgia State University. Is a good friend of mine, Dr. Daniel Conine, is a professor there. And we were talking about this, and he has his students very engaged, and they sort of asked, well, tell us about, your knowledge of behavior analysis and how that goes into play as a chief clinical officer. And I thought, well, of course, course, there is a technical side, but I'll tell you the things that people typically reach out to me about are what you just described, Linda, which is time management, organization, ethics, things that are a little bit more challenging in terms of the day-to-day. And of course, every once in a while, it's, hey, what treatment should I use for this attention maintain problem behavior? But for the most part, it's those time management, organization, professional development skills that people are seeking me out for, and I'm sure seeking you as leaders out as well. So it's important for sure.
Yeah, that was certainly my experience in not just my clinical work, but even as a professor, is that, you got people, like you said, Amber, super smart, super motivated, got a lot of knowledge in their head, but have trouble with time management or have trouble with organization. And both of those can lead to having issues with being able to prioritize or problem solve. Right. So I think you're right, Linda. These are cusp and sort of pivotal skills that not only will facilitate acquiring other skills, but also contact with reinforcement for using all the skills you already have. So, I think when it comes to organizing, we're thinking about how to manage your resources so that they're quickly accessible to you or to others, right? Because we're also talking about being organized to impact other people, not just ourselves.
Find your stuff.
Yeah, find your stuff. Know what tasks you have to do, be able to prioritize those tasks based on, a number of different factors. And then you got time management, how to use the time available to you with all of those inputs that you're figuring out from your organization side of things.
Well, so I think we probably all agree that these are critical skills and we use them a lot. We help other people with them. The flip side of having them makes you better is not having them makes you worse. And worse in terms of, I think, stress and distress and feeling overwhelmed, feeling burnout, feeling just anxiety all the time.
Yeah,
and it
feeling ineffective.
And feeling ineffective and feeling like there's not enough time and I can't get this done. And so that stress also can lead to some performance problems. That is, you are correctly describing that you're not getting it all done. And some of our fellow trumpeters and I published a study where we were kind of looking at success of BCBAs and also barriers to success, trying to identify, a functional approach, like what could we do? Is it, what are all the things that could be leading to high performance or lower performance in caseload management? And by far, these organization and time management skills were the best predictor of success or failure in caseload management skills, more so than size of caseload, geographic distribution, drive time, funding constraints, like all the things that you would think and that people reported. Nope, it was this. And so the crazy thing is that most graduate programs do not teach this skill set.
Right.
Yeah. And it's just listening to you talk about those elements and sort of that stress that can occur as a result of poor planning, poor time management. I think the initial transition is hard because it requires you to sort of step back and look at your whole life, really, not just your work life, but look at it and just really critically question, where are you spending your time? Is that a good use of your time? If not, what can you do about it? And there's a lot of work that goes into that initial kind of assessment, like, let me figure out what I'm doing and why it feels this way. But then there's maintenance, right? Once you figure it out and you maybe make some movement toward it, you have to check in. So I don't know about you all, but for me, every once in a while, I will look at my schedule and think, well, why the heck am I even in that meeting? Like, I say nothing, I do nothing, and I'm not even sure why we have the meeting anymore. Or, why am I doing XYZ when somebody else is better suited to do it? And so this just constant evaluation of where your time is spent, and then having all the resources in place for where your time is spent. When you kind of narrow it down to what you should be doing, it's a lot of work. And I think it's just easier to kind of go through the day and then at the end of it say, well, I didn't really accomplish anything today, but maybe I will tomorrow.
Try again.
And you just keep on going. So that critical analysis, if I could, make a recommendation on where to start, is just look at your whole life, your whole day, what you do, and figure out, are you doing things that you shouldn't be, or that could be accomplished in a different format or different way or a different frequency or duration or something like that. And even if it's one small change to start, that's one small change, right?
I love that. And I think that frequent revisiting is so important, particularly for newer folks in the profession, because you are also simultaneously likely to be experiencing other life events that are going to impact your ability to do your regular to-dos. And it may make it easier. It may make it more difficult. Who knows? But those things are going to change, right? Like, you get married. Now you have a different pull on your time potentially, or you buy a house that needs to get fixed up, or you have an elderly family member that needs some care. And so this isn't just to strap in and do the same thing because it's what you've always done. Yep. You have to constantly, when I chat with folks, it's always sort of, as Linda mentioned, I need more time in the day. I can't get you that. I can't give you more time. But what we can look at is what time you have and what are your inputs and how do we arrange those optimally? And those are going to change. So I love that recommendation, Amber.
And I love the idea that, David Allen, in some of his TED Talks, he talks about these kinds of skills as having a tether to your surfboard.
I like that.
They make you capable to try bigger, better waves, bigger, better things. It's not going to keep you from wiping out. But if you do, you know exactly how, like, pull that surfboard over, hop on and go again. And, it's not like I never get a little wobbly or fall off the surfboard. When I became Java editor, I had to really decide, okay, I've got to do something differently. I got to shift some things. I've got to, it's just, you add in, it's got to go somewhere. And you can't just add on top and not expect there to be ill effects.
Right.
Yeah, I like that idea of, if you fall off the surfboard, you get back on and the tricks. This also comes from that Atomic Habits book by James Clear, but he says, to build habits, and what he tries to do is just never do something that he doesn't want to do twice. So let's say you have a writing schedule in place, or, project focused, time, 1 hour a day, every day of the week, and you miss one. Well, some people's natural reaction is, well, that's it. It's all out the window. It's gone now. Just try not to do it twice, right? Just try not to like that. Let's say you're trying to lose weight, right? And you have a cheat meal. Well, don't throw it all out the window. Okay, you had one meal. It's okay. You just get back on the bandwagon and just try not to make that same mistake twice. So I use that in my day too, because like you said, you fall off, you get off course, but okay, just, Amber, try not to do it twice in a row, right? Try not to do it twice in a row. And if I follow that, I find that I do get right back on track, and it's no big deal at all. But it's easy to respond to that as if, well, clearly this isn't going to work. I'm done, throw it out the window.
Yeah. And, normally we would want a few more data points to throw an intervention out the window, right?
Right.
But I love, Amber, that you are kind of talking about how we talk to ourselves about these things, which also is really relevant to the book, because we really have forward in all of the content this idea that supervision and mentorship is a committed relationship that goes both directions. And speaking kindly to your supervisees and trainees about, maybe they didn't get a task done on time. Okay, well, what are your strategies for managing your time? And maybe that didn't work as well, or maybe you don't have any. And so that, right. I mean, that's probably but I really love that idea. Don't forget to be nice to yourself. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but also offer the same kindness and grace to your trainees and supervisees, and realize that many of them haven't been taught any of these skills, and it's contingency shaped, right? So that there's some learning history that we're having to kind of go against there.
Yeah,
Mhm. Well, we talk about several different kinds of organization and time management strategies, and like the OG that it all has to start with is planning and managing your tasks and time, figuring out when you're going to do something, how long it should take you to do it, or how much you can get done in the allotted time. And the only way to consistently plan is to plan, period. Plan time to plan. And if you don't have that planning time in there, everything else is going to rattle around. It might even be pretty good, but it won't be as good as it could be if you had really thought through, when's the right time to do this?
Yeah.
How much can I get done in the allotted time? Doesn't matter what I want to happen. What's the reality I'm working with?
Right.
Tell us a little bit about some of your strategies in this area, and then Tyra, you add in.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will make another recommendation for a book that has been really instrumental in allowing me to really do exactly what you just said, plan and plan meticulously. There's an author, his name is Cal Newport, C-A-L, Newport, just like it sounds. He wrote a book called Deep Work. And it's a great book. I highly recommend it. But essentially the strategy that he recommends is something called time blocking. Now, he didn't create time blocking, but he's really been an author who sort of has put it out there as, hey, knowledge workers, people in professions where you have to sit down and sometimes think about hard things, should really think about this. But he also has a planner that I buy and use, the manual planner that I use very religiously. But the general gist is that from the time you start working until the time you stop working is meticulously accounted for, right? And so you never want to have these situations where your time is just left free to vary, because guess what? You'll end up buying shoes on the internet. You'll end up on Facebook. People working from home now, you're going to be doing your dishes and you know it. And so, those every moment is meticulously accounted for. And some of he talks about some of the common criticisms of this. Well, I have to be available via email all day. Well, okay, kind of. But if you really need to respond to emails, you just put that in your time blocking, right? You got and I'm a person, I'm sure you guys are too. You do have to be responsive. That's part of my job, right? But not all day long. I can easily put in little 30-minute chunks that take me away from the internet and allow me to focus on something else. And so I have been using that time blocking strategy now for about maybe 18 months. And I'll tell you, it made substantial changes in my productivity, and just allowed me to take days where I thought I didn't have time. I would say, I'm back-to-back meetings on that day. Well, the truth is I actually do have time during those days. It's just that I was using it not productively, right? So it's a 30-minute chunk here, an hour at the end of the day. And when you specifically say, well, during that 30-minute chunk, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. Well, gosh, it's amazing what you could accomplish in a reasonable work week, so that's my recommendation. And I'm sure you two are experts too. So you probably have great ideas about that. But time blocking has been really, really a life changer for me.
I love that idea. I'll just give 3 kind of short ones that have been really helpful for me more recently. This one isn't recent, but this took me a really long time to learn, and I still currently struggle with it. But that is to not put big overarching labels or tasks on my to-do list. So, if I need to edit a manuscript, or I need to develop a script for a video that we're working on at work or something, I can't just put that as the label. And if I want to put that as the label, sort of as a motivator, then in my calendar or in my journal, I put the specific thing I'm going to work on in that time. So it might say something like, editorial duties, and then very specifically download these manuscripts and assign, reviewers. Or if it's, my video script, it might say, just look at what's on the website right now, or rewatch that video to, give yourself some ideas. So I no longer put just large overarching titles, because it deflates me and I don't know what to do. I lose time. And sometimes I only have 15 minutes. And this is another strategy that I learned from Linda. So this is my second strategy. And I learned this from Linda, and it truly was life-changing for me. And so I tell everybody this. It doesn't matter if you only have 10 minutes, you can still get some good crap done in that time if you know what all of your tasks are, and you have kind of thought about, what are some 5-minute tasks, what are some hour-long tasks, and you have those in a list running somewhere, so that if I have a meeting that ends early, I don't get online and buy me some shoes.
You might.
If you plan for it, you might.
Yeah. If I plan for it, yes. If I finished all my other tasks, then maybe. But I have very specific things like, okay, somebody tagged me in that document, and I just need to go through and make sure it looks like it's in the right order. I can do that in 10 minutes. So that was life-changing, because those are those little irritating tasks that just don't ever seem to get done. And then my third thing is kind of related to that. I track when I bump activities. That happens to me a lot, because in my current job, I have to be available to folks in the department to sometimes address immediate emergency type situations. And if I had, an hour to work on something planned, but one of my folks needs me to talk through, a case or planning or something, I have to make myself available in that moment. And so if I'm bumping things, I track it, and I'll say, I'll reschedule it at another time. You yep, Linda, I can get on and I'll be with you right there. And I'll move that thing to another spot, and I'll say second schedule. And so if it gets to a third time I've rescheduled it, I know that I'm not picking the right time to honor the fact that I need to get that thing done. Or I have one task right now that I'm working on, I just don't want to do it. Right. And so then
it's a motivational issue.
Yes. So then I engage an account buddy, and I say okay, Amber, I've moved this task 5 times. Seriously, I'm going to do XYZ by this date. Check in on me, please. Hold me accountable. So those 3 things have been really helpful for me.
That's awesome.
I love all of those ideas. And, that idea that I have to always be available by email, or everything else is more important than this thing I was going to do. It's an illusion. I'm pretty responsive to email, and I don't have my email open right now. My email alerts are turned off on every single device. Mm-hmm. When I am doing this thing with you, I'm doing it with you. I am giving it 100%. And then I'm going to look at my emails. And in fact, in trying to do that, I end up more responsive than most people who are getting kind of pecked to death by their email little ducks coming to get them constantly, because I actually get the work done, and I put in time to manage emails and, to respond to things or manage tasks. That idea, I think, is one that you will simply not believe it can be true until you try it and get the data.
Yeah,
right? I just got to do it.
It's so true. And, it's interesting. So that same author, and I apologize to keep talking about it, but he's really a wonderful author, Cal Newport. He's actually a computer science professor. And in his book, he talks about the history of email. And he says, nobody was ever hired to be a professional emailer. Yet, that's not a job posting, but yet that's what a lot of people find themselves doing. And he traces back the history of email. And email was never intended to be these long open-ended questions, like for this like dialogue. It was really meant to be just a quick way to give somebody a quick short answer or a quick directive, but it's turned into this thing that is just replaced all other forms of communication that bogs people down. And so, like you say, Linda, you, even though you're not constantly checking, you're probably more responsive than the people that are, because it's so focused. And this is another tip I will give, is that if you ever find yourself spending more than like a minute on an email, it's time for a phone call. Cut that off, like these long back and forth. And I'll be honest, I was a little guilty of this early in my career. You guys probably remember some of my long emails. And that's just shifted because it's an efficiency a strategy, right? It's hey, there's a lot of open-ended questions here that I'm really not going to be able to answer in short words.
Yes.
And sometimes what I find is either people, they don't really need your response that bad. And so when you say, let's do a phone call, they say, oh, no, I'm fine. Because for some people, phone calls are a little bit aversive. They don't want to do that. Or it is really important and you can knock it out in like 15 minutes. You would have spent all day, if the content gets a little bit stressful, then now your anxiety level is increasing. So that's a really important one, I think, for the listeners, is look at that email communication and make sure it really is focused on quick back and forth responses. One thing here, sharing this here. And if you're spending a ton of time, then there's an analysis that needs to be done on how it could be, communicated a little bit more efficiently. So yeah, I'm glad you brought
love that.
Yeah, well, I think that takes us into the notion of inbox zero and managing your emails and staying on top of stuff. When I say to people that my goal is inbox zero, you mean zero that you haven't read? And I mean, no, like actual zero. Like none in there, zero. And that seems almost unbelievable to them, that how could you not have any emails in your inbox, and maybe even why. And the why is the important part, that I think if you don't understand why, you will never take the actions required to get there. And the why is, I want to always know that the things in front of me are the important things that remain. They're not just stuff. They're not stuff I've looked at 5 times. It's not like find the needle in the haystack. Here's 1,000 emails in your inbox. Which of these are you going to respond to now? Like, you can't win that game, right? You spend all your time deciding what you're going to do instead of doing it. So it's kind of the equivalent of what Tyra was saying of, at this time, write down exactly what you're going to do, not just, basically, if I write down manage email, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through every single email, triaging it exactly the same way until they're all gone, right? So all I need to put is email, because I know I'm going to do that every single time. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to decide if it is actionable, if I can do it. And with email, probably I'll go as long as 2 minutes and that's it. Most of the time it's 30 seconds. And if it's doable in that amount of time, I do it. And then I get rid of it. I either file it or delete it. If it takes longer than that, I identify what I'm going to need to do. And then when am I going to do that? And then
on
when
your calendar.
Yep, that's right. On my calendar. Or once I've gone through all of the emails once, I may have enough time to go back and actually do the tasks for those 2 or 3 things. And number 1, getting to zero is super reinforcing. My husband and I tell each other when we get to inbox zero, and we celebrate that. But it's also, to me, it's like problems can be scary unless you know how to problem solve. Email can be scary unless you know how to triage.
Mhm. Yeah, and that goes back into what Tyra was saying, right? So, sometimes there's something in an email that you can just respond to really quickly, but then usually the email is just the communication to connect to something bigger. And so if you have a system like Tyra described, which is there are these 4 or 5 tasks that I have to do underneath that overarching thing, well, then it just goes on your to-do list. And yeah, you can delete the email, or, that's not the thing. Sometimes it doesn't need a response. It's just a prompt to you to say, oh yeah, I got to put that on my list or add to my list based on that big thing. The other thing, while we're on this email topic, I will recommend is, I'm a little more familiar with Gmail, but filters have been a lifesaver for me. So as an example, there are some things that I get in my email that I need to respond to, but not all day long. So as an example, we have a discharge committee where we review all of the cases that are discharging out of the company. And there's a form that goes along with that. Well, people are filling those out all day long. And so one strategy could be that I just look at them and I read them and I respond, but I set up a filter that all of them go into a folder called discharge submissions. And then I put about 30 minutes, 45 minutes, depending on how many there are each week on my calendar. And so I'm in the right mind frame, right? I'm thinking about discharge and I go through all of them for that day or that week, whatever frequency I need to do based on the volume. But so if you find yourself like these things are just kind of coming through, but they're all in the same category, you could just filter and then put time on your schedule. As long as there's not an immediate, like I got to respond to this right away. Okay, I'll get to it Wednesday during my time block where I'm supposed to be looking through those things. So you could also,
you're going to be more effective when you get to that time block, because you're doing all of these things at once. You're focused, and you're also going to see multiple examples in close proximity in a way that allows you to think like, oh, you know what? This person kind of did this or talked about this. That should be happening here. And you wouldn't do that if you did them at random times. So you give yourself a benefit of doing these clustered similar tasks at the right time.
Yeah, I agree. I do the same thing, Amber. I, into my inbox come emails from a bunch of different kind of email aliases and web forms that are about different things. Some are about self-reporting, some are notices, a variety of things, but they all require a different mindset and they all have sort of different standard steps that I follow. So if I was looking at a mix of them, I'd be constantly shifting. Wait, okay, now I have to remember, like, what are the considerations for a self-report, or what do I need to go search for? But same thing, I filter. It took me a minute because I don't even know, like in Outlook 365, the filters were not my best friend. It took me probably a good week to figure it out. And I had to keep retrying, but I was persistent in the face of a lot of punishment. And I got it down, and it's amazing. It's incredible. And then I can block time for any emails related to that content, and I'm already in the right mindset, and I already know exactly what my checklist is when I'm going through them. So I think that's a fantastic recommendation. And I get heart palpitations, especially now that we're so remote, and you get the chance sometimes to see people's desktops or their email, and they have 3,952 unread emails. And I clutch my chest, super gasp.
I hope mine's not in there.
Yeah. How about we just cancel this meeting and you deal with your inbox? What I will say, I think one of the smartest things is to stop thinking about your email as a filing system. If you truly want to save an email, you should save that as a PDF in a cloud system somewhere. And just because the little bit of law school in me, for liability purposes as well, it is not a good idea to keep emails inside even in your deleted folder forever. So I also have regularly scheduled purge times where if I didn't move something, if Amber sends me an email and I think, oh, it's got a to-do list and I'm going to need to do those things for her, I will save it as a PDF, or better yet, I copy and paste it into my calendar event to get those things done for you. And if I'm really good, I'll invite you so you can double check on me that I actually get them done. And then it goes in the deleted. And then about every 3 to 5 weeks, I go through and delete my deleted box. I do the same thing for my downloads and my trash can on my desktop too. So y'all might want to get looking at that stuff.
That's a good. I think my trash can might be very full. You might have heart palpitations if you looked at the trash can.
Well,
Take out the trash.
And I actually do use a filing system within my emails. I think one of the things that this illustrates is that there is not a perfect system. There is the perfect system that you build for yourself that you consistently use that produces your own productivity. We all use different email systems. We all use different calendaring systems. We all use different cloud systems. So if someone's looking for, oh, I'll use your system, they're going about it the wrong way. It's really more about, what do I need to do? What do I need to find? When I am trying to figure out how I should name something or where I should store it, I ask myself, in a week when I'm looking for this, I'm going to look for, and then I fill in the blank. And I've already behaved as I will behave. And so I create the thing that I'm going to be able to find when I later behave that way. So it's very much about the things we do every day to evolve our systems. And I just want to mention one more strategy that I think is a game changer. And that is, don't keep it in your head. Your head is a terrible place when you start filling it with a bunch of things. Like, you ask me where my coffee is, I don't know. It's either right in front of me or it's not. You ask me where my keys are, I don't know. It's, I will find them when it's time. And if you constantly have ideas or reminders that you are behaving to keep present so that you don't forget them, you are overtaxing yourself. Like, we have to remember, as behavior analysts, it's not storage, it's behavior. And so you didn't put that somewhere in your brain and then, oh, well, I'll just go get it. You are constantly behaving to remind yourself. And that is taxing, and it is occurring while you're trying to do something else. And it makes you less effective and more stressed and more fatigued. So get it out of your head, write it down, get it. I send emails to myself to do something.
Me too.
Or voicemails or what have you. Like, I want to use my brain for some big old thinking and some focused doing, not kind of being a return regurgitate machine for things that I could write down, because paper doesn't forget anything.
That's right. Yeah, and it can be simple too. It can be just a little notebook that you have here, but I think, just on the side of your desk. But I think, trying to avoid, I think what happens a lot of times, people will, maybe want to do it electronically, or there's some emails, and then you get sucked into your emails, you get sucked into your chats or your text messages or something like that. And so, we'll age ourselves a little bit here, but the old school paper and pencil, you're not going to get distracted by that white paper there. Yeah, it's just, you just jot it down, and then maybe you have a system for transferring it over later. But yeah, and then related to that, I typically have a process where at the end of the day, I have a shutdown routine where I will plan my next day. I'll time block it and give myself just some notes about what to think about. And then it's sort of released, right? I don't have to think about it when I'm hanging out with my son and eating dinner. And, I know I've done my time blocking. I know I've got my day set up. And so the stress reduction is really there. And then I try and do that weekly too, when I'm going into the week. So Friday afternoon, kind of looking at the main areas of my life and my work life, and what, I just kind of free write, like, well, what do you want to accomplish? Or, I'll say, you got a really busy week, so maybe just lower the bar a little bit. Don't have high expectations for yourself. You're probably not going to get a lot of stuff. That's okay. And then the actual execution of that comes through the daily sort of shutdown and prep for the next day. And you're exactly right. Like what you're talking about, Lynn, is just getting out of your head, and if you trust yourself and you found your system, then you don't have to be stressing about, oh my goodness, my AE letter is due tomorrow, or Linda asked me for something, I didn't respond. Well, you've got it programmed in. You can just let it all go. Take a deep breath. Enjoy your evening.
That's exactly right. It really is critical for lowering your stress and putting yourself in a position to do this when I'm doing this, and then do the other thing when I'm doing that. And that's the same thing for work versus personal life. You know, don't half-ass it. If I am spending time with my family, try to spend that time with my family. If I'm cooking dinner, I'm going to make it the yummiest thing I possibly can. And all I want to be focused on is that. And when I'm at work, I really want to be focused on that. And I think carrying things around with you in your head, so to speak, it just adds burden. And what we, you know, like we all have busy lives. Let's not make it any harder.
I agree. I 100% agree. And I think the greatest gift you can give someone, speaking of supervision, a supervisee, a trainee, a caregiver that you're working with, is your attention and time in that moment. So I think that's important. And that sort of leads into this idea of using our time together effectively in meetings. So, you know, scheduling the right kinds of meetings, planning it ahead of time, and then carrying it out. What are some of the strategies that you two have around effective, even deciding if something should be a meeting, but then actually planning and carrying out effective meetings?
Oh man, great question. Do you want to go first, Linda? Or do you want me to? Or
well, I have a lot to say about meetings.
I know you do.
So you go first because it'll just flow once it goes.
Well,
but
you know, I think it goes without saying you have to have a structured agenda. And if you're the person leading the meeting, you really have to lead the meeting, right? You have to notice not necessarily content of what people are saying, but why they're saying it. And you have to steer people back on course. And it's active, right? When you get done leading a meeting that is productive, at the end of it, you should be kind of tired, like,
Sure.
especially the more people that are in it. And one strategy that I have used is called a parking lot. Where I think this is a common in business, but you know, somebody gets a little bit off task, or their dialogue gets a little bit, you know, out there, and you just say, yes, that's really important. I just talk about it, but let's go back to the blah, blah, blah that we were talking about, and I'm gonna put that in the parking lot, right? And then you decide, is it really, is that something you got to follow up on, or, you know, because sometimes, you know, let's face it, people just, they want to talk or to prove a point, or, you know, and they, you know, there's just some other function to why they're saying something that isn't related to the task at hand. Sure. And I think you have to identify that. And then of course, if you're the person in the meeting, you got to be real respectful of the leader and like, please just don't get everybody off course, right? Like part to contribute to the goal, the mission, and make sure that you're helping move the group along. And then I guess just strategies for determining whether you need a meeting or not. I don't know if I have anything really good to determine whether you initially need a meeting, but I have really a lot of great things in place for whether I need to continue having a meeting.
Aha. Am I going to do that a second time?
You know, some meetings, as you all know, you could have them on your schedule for a long time, and you just that assessment of like, why are we meeting again? Or
yeah, you got to evaluate.
You just evaluate it, and usually you know pretty quickly. So you can do some schedule purging, if you will, if you do that regularly.
I love that.
You know, I think a lot of people feel like I can't get anything done because I have all these meetings. And I often view that as then you're doing the wrong things in your meetings. Because if you have a really good meeting, everybody knows why they're there. They arrive ready to do some doing. Then you do all the doing and then you're done. And what's better than that? You do have to kind of think about, do I have the right people for what we're going to accomplish? And most of the just update communication functions of meetings, people take a little bit too long to do it. Like, unless the update is, let me show you something and get feedback so that I can take it away and change it. You just need to say, got it done, still working on it, update you next time. And then use your time together to interact and have ideas that you wouldn't have apart. And I think that comes right back to this notion, any kind of meeting, but definitely supervision meetings. The supervision meeting should be used to answer questions and to explore things that you wouldn't be able to explore apart. or that supervisee would not have on their own. You only get so much time. And so the notion of, even as you said, Amber, being a good meeting leader and listening, a lot of times people come to supervision and they're kind of telling you a story, or kind of, you can tell like something's bugging them, but they haven't yet formulated, they can't tell you in 30 seconds flat. And so when you see that, as a supervisor, you got to not get frustrated, because here's a data point. They don't know how to concisely formulate a meaningful question that will get them what they need. So teach them that, right?
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
That's exactly right. And so you can kind of listen and say, I'm hearing you tell this story, and it sounds like there's a couple of things in there. If I had been coming to supervision, maybe I would have asked a question like this, and then model that for them and say, does that really get at what you wanted to know, or did I miss part of it? And if we kind of have meetings where we hold each other accountable for using each other's time wisely, and as a supervisor or manager, if someone's not using your time wisely, getting upset usually isn't going to be helpful. Just point out to them, well, what if we did this instead? And help them know how to use it, help them not make that mistake a second time. Then you often end up feeling like meetings are the most enjoyable, productive times of your day, instead of, the field of crap you got dragged through.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to tell a really funny story. So you, Linda, are the expert at meetings. And prior to coming to Trumpet, I just didn't have this history where there were agendas and you were prepared, and it just wasn't part of my professional history and experience. And so I remember you and I started meeting together to work on some research lab type stuff. And I had volunteered to take over for somebody who was on maternity leave. And I showed up to the meeting and I had no agenda. And you did some of what you just described. I don't remember exactly what you said to me, but something that prompted me to say, should I prepare for this meeting? He kind of said, well, golly, that's a great idea. And I did, and that was it. It wasn't my idea, it was your idea, right? That I should prepare for the meeting. But then that was it. I remember it just clicking. And this was 9 years ago, right? This was, you should be prepared for meetings. And then you shaped my behavior of preparing and using time wisely. And, that's just evolved now over the course of many years to just, it's not even a question anymore. But
and now you too are a master of meetings.
I hope so.
I just have two quick things. One is, it frustrates me when people send me a meeting invite and I don't really know the content of the meeting. And so a gentle prompt that I often will use, like I might email Amber back and say, thank you for scheduling that meeting, Amber. Can you give me, the top 2-3 things that you want to talk about or accomplish? Because I want to make sure I'm prepared and I can honor your time. But really what I'm saying is, dang, Amber, let me know what we're doing in this meeting.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is, it's really critically important at the end of a meeting that you recap, especially if you're the leader, that you recap for everybody. Okay, so here, we covered this and this and this, and this is what Linda's going to do. Cool, Linda, you got what you need. Amber, you're going to do this. I'm going to do these 3 things, and we're going to meet again on blah, blah, blah. So that recap is important.
I love that. You guys both talked about supervision, and I will tell you, as with you probably are getting invited to speak at conferences about supervision. It's a very hot topic. We published several papers. You now have published a book, and so people want you to talk about this. And I have a little part of a talk that I give where I mention that if you are a supervisor, you really need to be completely present for your supervisee. And I talk about simple things like not responding to your email, not checking your phone message, which based on our conversation today seems so straightforward, right? It seems like, of course you wouldn't do that. But every time I talk about that, everybody in the audience is nodding their head, which suggests to me that there's a lot of people checking their emails and doing other things while they're meeting with a supervisee. And to me, that's so basic. That's a starter, right? Like that is where you start, is just that 100% focus. And this kind of relates back to everything we're talking about, which is in order to be focused, you have to have good strategies in place and know that you don't have to use that time to check email or text or whatnot.
That's right. And you have to acknowledge that your subtle behavior speaks. Each one of those people nodding their heads, like you're describing that their physical behavior was evoked by a feeling that from the description of, yeah, my supervisor emailed and did other things when I was present because it sent them a message. These other things are more important than you. Yep. And your behavior speaks, right? And you got to know what you're saying and make sure that you actually want to be saying that, or else quit it, say something different with your behavior. And focused, engaged attention says a lot to the person that you're interacting with about their value to you.
Yeah, say something kind and compassionate with your behavior.
Yeah. Well, I think that is just about our time today, but I feel like we could do this forever.
Yeah.
Amber, it was so good to see you, writing that series of articles for the special issue in behavior analysis and practice. It was really transformative. It's like we all had to put into words the lessons we'd learned, the places where we were still hoping to grow, even some errors that we'd not only seen, but also made ourselves.
Yep.
And, we felt, I remember when we had every time we talked about the paper, it was like this pressure of like, we've got to help people know to do this. Like there's such a negative impact if you don't follow those kind of general big ideas and recommended practices. So maybe sometime you could come back and we could talk about group supervision in a different podcast.
I'd love to do. This was a lot of fun, and I really appreciate the invitation. It's an honor to be able to speak with you too and talk about something that's important to everybody.
Oh, thank you, Amber. Well, I guess this wraps it up. So we will say goodbye to all of our listeners.
Goodbye, everyone. See you again on the lift.